Hey, it's Crypto Bobby, and today I want to talk to you about $8,000 Bitcoin. Bitcoin has made a pretty convincing move, at least in the past couple of hours, and for the time being has stayed at or above $8,000. So a little bit more of a long-term move. Are we going to stay above $8,000? Are we going to see a little bit of a pullback? I also want to talk about Ethereum having a nice pop-up from the 300, 310, 315 range that was kind of sitting at forever and making a convincing move above 350. Are we in for an Ethereum nice move past the all-time highs? Is that going to be a potential? And if it is that something that might really power an altcoin run as a whole? Also, I want to talk about some portfolio moves that I made, consolidating my overall portfolio for simplicity. Also, a trade that I made on Neo that turned out to be pretty good, and a new entrant into the portfolio as a whole. But before I get into all of that, one thing that I do want to briefly mention to you guys is on December 9th in Vegas, I actually just accepted my first speaking gig in the crypto world. So I got the opportunity to speak at the North American Cryptocurrency Conference December 9th in Vegas. I'm really excited about it. It should be a ton of fun. I'm actually going to tomorrow be running a little bit of a giveaway for you folks who might be interested in joining. But I'm excited. It's going to be the first time I've ever been invited to speak in this space. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully providing a pretty knockout topic of discussion for you guys that might be something that's really of interest. But speaking with a couple different people in the space, David Hay, Nathan Giordani, and then there's my ugly mug there as well. So looking forward to that, and stay tuned tomorrow for some free tickets there. But just wanted to mention that it's the first time, like I said, I'm speaking on the crypto world outside of just the YouTube channel. So I'm looking forward to it. Going to put a ton of effort into the overall crypto discussion and the speech that I'll be able to give. So I'm excited about that, and it's been it's pretty fun, pretty interesting for me. So whole new change of pace, whole new challenges, but I'm really looking forward to that. So hopefully, whether it's through those free tickets or if you're out in Vegas or whatever it might be, hopefully I'll have the opportunity to meet some of you folks there. That'd be awesome. But hopping into the bulk of the discussion today. So I wanted to first kick things off with just the updated portfolio as a whole. Obviously, this is a fluid thing for me. I try to update my portfolio where I see fit, make moves that I think in a lot of cases would make financial sense, hold on in some cases. Sometimes I have shorter term trades. It really just depends upon where I see things going. And if you remember previously, my last bit of the portfolio is a little bit more diversified. Maybe I had a couple different smaller altcoins, but for the time being right now, I have continued to take a large portion of Bitcoin right now. You can see it is actually through no fault or for no specific reasoning. Bitcoin is actually 50% of my, and that's Bitcoin Core, but Bitcoin is 50% of my overall portfolio right now, basically on the dot. And I made a larger move into Ethereum at both 310 and at 328. And right now we have Ethereum at 357. So those moves into Ethereum when it was a little bit cheaper than 310 and 328 range were something that I'm excited about and happy about. I was up to about 65% of money in Bitcoin, and I moved about 15% of that into Ethereum at those numbers. So I'm happy with how that's played out so far. And I think Ethereum might be in for a little bit more of a run, which we'll talk about shortly. The one thing that I did consolidate on is I had a couple other smaller cryptocurrencies, consolidated them recently into Neo. And you're probably looking right here and you're seeing that Neo is actually not on the screen. That's because I bought Neo at $32 recently and ended up selling it at around $42. So made a pretty nice profit there. And one cryptocurrency that I've been really interested in getting into and haven't made a move on yet was Cardano ADA. Only about 5.5% of the portfolio now, but I'm looking to potentially continue to increase that. And I basically took my Neo investment, my Neo profits, moved that all into Cardano as Neo's had a really nice run. Could it continue? Yeah, absolutely. But I think Cardano is in a nice market cap place. One thing, and I'll go to talk about it as well, but one thing that I think is really pretty interesting when you go to some of these meetups. I've talked to a few different people, and I was at the meetup in New York at the props office. So I'll pull this up real quick. But I was at the meetup at the props office in Manhattan and talked a little bit about some of the cryptocurrency, some of the latest action that's been going on. And with that, was talking to one of my internet friends, and we're talking a little bit about Cardano and did some more research on it, and a lot of what interested me about Cardano and what this person had said about Cardano really kind of piqued my interest, and I figured it was worth going into. Maybe it was a little bit bigger upside there than Neo for the time being, so I made that move into it. But every time I do make some of these moves, I typically tweet about them. So if you're not following me yet on Twitter, definitely go ahead and do that. I'll put a link to my Twitter in the description. But one thing too that I'll mention, as far as not even the conference itself, but had a chance to meet, as I mentioned, I was talking about Cardano. Got that brought up to me at the props meetup, and then did a bunch more research on it afterwards, and decided to just make an educated decision to go into it. But I do want to say thanks to a couple guys that actually, after the YouTube Live Crypto Happy Hour, were based in New York and ended up meeting me at the props office for that. So Umi, it was awesome to meet you, dude. Pretty cool to get the chance to speak with some of you guys that have just found myself through the channel, have a couple beers with you. That was awesome. So I really do, like I said, appreciate the opportunity to meet you, Umi, as well as a couple other guys there too that were from the channel. Now, outside of the updated portfolio as a whole, we'll take a look at Bitcoin here, and then we'll pop over to Ethereum. But as of the time of recording this right now, Sunday evening on the East Coast around 6:30, Bitcoin is literally sitting exactly at $8,000. And I've certainly thought about taking some profits, and I've decided at this point in time, with where my exposure is, as you can see, about 50% of my portfolio in Bitcoin, I've decided to stay put for the time being and hold on, especially with some of the institutional money that's continuing to come into the space, as well as the upcoming CME futures launch. I've decided that I'm going to sit tight, hold on to that 50% position, and just continue to dollar cost average my way into Bitcoin and into Ethereum, like I typically do on a bi-weekly basis. So as I've looked at this, the run-up has been quite steep. It has been very impressive, especially waking up and seeing that, waking up kind of seeing where we're at with this $8,000 Bitcoin. But even with the number where it's at right now, I'm not necessarily buying more Bitcoin in bulk, but I feel comfortable holding at this level. I know typically it's not the worst thing in the world to sell here, but I'm probably going to just hold on and let it ride for the time being, unless I see some type of specific evidence to really convince me otherwise. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I think Ethereum has been pretty fascinating to watch. It's had a little bit of a bounce from some of the bottoms of a little bit of a bounce in comparison to Bitcoin, but I still think that that Bitcoin has sucked up so much of the overall market capitalization that it's been tough for Ethereum. Now though, I think it's Ethereum to me seems to be one of those ones that kind of slowly builds up steam and slowly builds up, and it has for the past couple of days. It's been climbing from the 300 to the 310 to 315 to 320 to 330, sitting at 330 for a little bit of while. It shoots up, sits for a little bit of while, shoots up. And so I went in, like I said, pretty heavy into Ethereum at the 310 range, and then at 320, 25, 328 or so. So I've been pretty happy. It's probably pretty similar in terms of I moved some of my Bitcoin profits to Ethereum for that move, and Bitcoin has obviously continued to go up to all-time highs. So it's not necessarily from an overall profit perspective the craziest thing yet. Ethereum has performed nicely, but Bitcoin has been the leader of the market. But I do think that Ethereum is primed for. I think Ethereum is starting to get maybe a little bit more steam back underneath it. And one of the positives, and I tend to agree with it, I retweeted something from I think Crypto Hustle on Twitter. But one of the positives, I think, everybody has their thoughts about Ethereum. whether there's other platforms out there that are better than it. The one thing that's interesting, though, is that Ethereum typically, when Ethereum runs, a lot of the altcoins run with it. Whereas when Bitcoin runs, some of the altcoins maintain their value, but they just don't keep pace with Bitcoin. And a lot of times it's because Bitcoin is just sucking up so much money out of the altcoins. But when Ethereum runs, traditionally, a lot of the altcoins have run with Ethereum. So I would love to see a concerted move from Ethereum back up to those all-time highs around the $400 range or so. That would be fantastic to see. It went at one point in time this morning all the way up. It sold all the way up to about 370 something, and then sold right back down to the 350, high 350 ranges, and that's where we're sitting right now at the 357 mark. So I'm looking at this. I'm happy with my overall exposure to Ethereum. I do think that we're positioned nicely with this to see a run back up to, those all-time highs, although I have certainly been wrong about Ethereum before as far as how quickly it could rise and when it will. But I kind of put my money where my thoughts is right now, and going for that move as well. And outside of that, it has been a fairly, if we're on-chain FX, it has been a pretty interesting day in the past. It has been a pretty interesting day in the crypto world. If we're looking at the change versus Bitcoin, Bitcoin has really led the market nicely. There's only been there's probably less than 10 or so cryptos out there, or around 12 cryptocurrencies out there that have outperformed Bitcoin, and it's been very slight. You could see Lisk outperforming Bitcoin by about 2%, Cardano outperforming Bitcoin, IOTA, but pretty minimally. While on the other end of the spectrum, there are a number of cryptos out there that are down pretty good on the day. Neo down decently on the day. It was up pretty good yesterday, up to $48 or around $48 or so. Whereas a couple other ones, Bitcoin Cash down a bit, Vertcoin. Obviously, when Neo goes down, Neo Gas goes down as well. But I feel pretty happy with where I'm at right now. I'm interested to see what happens with Cardano, and I'm looking to potentially get a little bit more exposure to that. So I might end up looking at Civic, maybe taking a little bit more profits from Civic, moving that into Cardano, and trying to increase a position there for the time being. A lot of the thought process, quite frankly, with Cardano and what I talked about with my friend at the Props meetup about Cardano was some of the investment theory there about right now it's really primarily and only traded on Bittrex. However, it is the actual team itself and a lot of the initial investors are Asian based, and right now there isn't a big opportunity for Japanese investors to get into Cardano for the time being. And if and when that happens, if and when the Japanese investors and other investors in Asia have an opportunity to openly trade Cardano on one of the larger Asian exchanges, I think that will give it a crazy pump up. And that might be something where, you could see one of those 50, 100% days, because Cardano is still small enough from a market capitalization perspective, $738 million market cap. So not a small cap by any stretch, but still small enough to have a day where it could pump an incredible amount. So that's a little bit of why I put some of basically my Neo profits and Neo investment into Cardano after Neo pumped up from $32 to like $45, and I sold it. Ended up selling it at about $42. So a little bit of the overall thesis there, and that's one of the big moves that I'm looking to potentially continue to make that stake in. As I see right now, really no availability for Cardano outside of Bittrex for the most part. And that's a little bit of a longer-term bet, a longer-term play to see if and when that pop might happen. Now, guys, outside of that, if you have any questions about the portfolio as a whole, the Vegas conference, my overall market thoughts and my overall perspectives here, I would really be interested in hearing your questions hopefully this video is helpful for you in terms of just getting, wanted to give a little bit of an update as far as kind of my overall thoughts, my overall sentiments, kind of where my head's at, where my put my money where my mouth is, as always, and trying to provide as much transparency there as I possibly can to kind of where my head is going from an investment standpoint. Again, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. And if you are new to the channel by any chance, my name is Crypto Bobby. I do daily videos on the subject of cryptocurrency, and then every once in a while I do what I call YouTube Live crypto happy hours. So I hop into YouTube Live, typically have a 6-pack of beer, sit there, have 1, 2, 3 beers with you guys, talk about what's happening in the marketplace, and take all your questions rapid fire as best as possible. So hit the subscribe button and the little notify bell next to that. So when I do go live or when I do publish a new video, you have instant access to that. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Crypto Bobby signing out. Peace.